Well, hey, welcome to A Valid Answer with Scott and Marshall. Marshall's sitting nice and straight. I'm all kind of hunched over. What's up with that? What do we got going on? What do you all...
Greetings, comrades.
Oh, no. Yeah, that's right. Marshall is the socialist, liberal atheist, and I am the capitalist, conservative pastor. And we have a podcast show together where we duke it out. Not literally.
We might today. I don't know. I had to call you to just make sure.
Yeah, we were texting back and forth what we were going to do and what we were going to say, and we were going back and forth, and all of a sudden the phone rings, and he's all, "Are you actually like? How are you reading my tone on this?" I go, "Well, I'm reading your tone. I'm reading your tone as the playful tone that I thought I was."
I just wanted to make sure.
Okay, just wanted to make sure because I think you were worried that it was gonna like just go down, because if it does, I mean, again, I'm the capitalist conservative, so I'm the self-defense.
Yeah,
I've got the training and ability to.
I'll be in trouble.
Yeah. So, hey, hold on a second. You're right. Let me share this real quick so we get going on
all of our different channels now.
Yeah, all of our different channels that we share here. So I just want to share this.
While Scott's doing that, I'm going to talk to you about what we are going to be doing today. Today, we're going to talk about capitalism and socialism. And for about the past week or so, this has been sort of a topic on my Facebook page. I've been sparring with other people, other friends that I have besides Scott. Yes, I actually have friends. Unbelievable.
Yeah, an atheist with friends. I mean, who would have thought that?
And I even did a little debate online, testing out sort of an online format, which might become practical for future use for us at some point. But anyway, it's the classic, socialism versus capitalism.
Kind of. It kind of sounds like that, but that's actually not completely where I'm going.
I know you are going like
specifically society versus individual.
Yeah,
that's specifically what I'm talking about, because that's the discussion that you had on there. That's what sparked me, is the whole thing on what is the government's role, to protect society or protect the individual, and that's
under capitalism, neither. It protects property.
Well, property rights, which is the individual.
Well,
that's
property.
The individual. So that's the individual rights, and that's where you always have to land. Otherwise, you get a lot of problems, which we're going to see today, that you're going to have to answer for as a person who pushes for government protecting societies over individuals. Sorry, I didn't catch what's interesting. I'm interesting, Josh. Yes, of course. I am interesting. Thank you very much. No, sorry. I'm being facetious on that. Okay, so
he's just arguing with himself.
I'm just arguing with them. Yeah, that's ultimately what you want to do in an argument, is get your opponent to take your side unawares, and then they end up arguing with themselves. You said that happened in that discussion.
Oh no, I was making a joke about something else, but no, it's a little something different. But anyway, let's go ahead and get on to it, because you were telling me Scott actually believes that socialism has killed more people than capitalism. We were going to stack bodies. Is that are we still going to do that?
We could
have that argument.
Yeah. Let me.
I told him he wasn't going to win. Well, let me open by asking you two questions.
Yes.
Number one, how long has capitalism been around?
I don't know.
Few hundred years, or since the beginning of time, perhaps, or
it seems like it's a common sense way of life, which is what you said is the definition of capitalism, which is bringing together capital and
land, labor, and capital to create value. That's entrepreneurship, which is one aspect of capitalism. How would you define capitalism?
Capitalism, I would define capitalism basically as the idea that you protect the individual's right and ability to be able to be in control of their own financial future, to be in control, to make as much as they can based on the market laws of supply and demand. That basically, if you create a better product, you should be able to benefit from that creation. That you should be able to profit, to have a profit and make a better life for yourself based on the thought and energy that you put into it that somebody else didn't. So then that breeds competitiveness. So somebody else is trying to outdo you, and ultimately the people get a better product, and the people get better service, and people get better things because these people are competing to make a profit. That the drive of making more money and the drive of making a profit and making a better life for yourself produces a byproduct of better things for other people for them to buy, and it betters their life as well.
Well, I don't think that's necessarily exclusive to socialism. I'll put that out there right
capitalism.
now. Well, the system of competition
Yeah.
to generate revenues is something that's found in every economic system, including communism and socialism. However, under communism, generally the workers would control the means of production.
Free market,
that
yes,
doesn't
Josh.
That doesn't mean that workers can't compete against one another, that factories can't compete, or cities or regions or what have you, industries can compete. My understanding of capitalism is that it is a system of voluntary exchange where everybody is selfish, but somehow everybody pursuing their own selfish ends sort of works out for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of how I see capitalism. I see capitalism as an inherently selfish ideology. But because I'm selfish, because I want a mansion, because I want a Lamborghini or a Ferrari or a Maserati or a Bugatti, as my daughter pointed out.
Yeah.
Okay. I am going to go out and create crazy mad value. I'm going to create so much value, whether I'm creating widgets or making movies or mining gold or doing whatever I'm doing.
Yeah.
But I'm going to create crazy mad value, and I'm going to sell that in the market to people who are hungry for that value.
Yeah.
And then I get to keep all those profits, and there comes the mansion, the yacht, the Bugatti, et cetera.
Which, by doing that, you are still also supporting other people and their
Right.
businesses.
Right.
Because you're buying what you want it to be the best. They have made something that they think is the best. They've created their own value, and you recognize that value, and you pay them, and it keeps on going.
So we sort of have this, we sort of, I think, have an agreement then on what the sort of capitalist ideology is, if you will, if it's an ideology. But then that ideology marries politics. Just the same as socialist ideology, which is where people need to work together, and it does mean that individuals may have to make sacrifices. You're not going to have everything your way all the time, but everybody's going to have something, and that when the workers control the means of production, they are more likely to democratize the fruits of that labor, if you will.
I would like to step in and correct language.
Well, okay, go right on ahead.
You cannot say sacrifice.
Sacrifice in what way?
That some people have to make sacrifices.
How so? Okay.
Because a sacrifice is a self thing. I make a sacrifice. When you force a sacrifice on me, that's no longer a sacrifice.
What is it, a tax? What is it?
It's a coercion. It's no longer a sacrifice. You can't use the word sacrifice because sacrifice is a self. I determine I'm going to make this sacrifice for this reason. If you're going to force a restriction on me and call it a sacrifice, that is mislabeling it, and that is co-opting a term that is actually a self-driven term and trying to use it as a forcible coercion term. Okay, so you cannot say some people have. You cannot say that socialism says some people have to sacrifice. No, some people have to be restricted.
How
that's the word. That's the
you want to use
word.
restriction?
That's what the word actually is. Yes.
Okay. All right.
So some people have to be restricted for the sake of society.
Okay. All right, fine. So some people are restricted or what have you.
Okay.
But the end result is everybody should ideally have something rather than some people with nothing. And if under true socialism, the system is democratized, all people have an equal share of voice in the decision making. So when, of course, the ideology marries politics, you get all kinds of crazy stuff.
Yes.
And I think this is true for both capitalism and communism. Now, if you want to, we can go down the list of atrocities and who has more bodies. If you want to open that up, we can. Or we can say, you know what, we're going to go beyond that and do something else. But if you want to start the body count, I'm ready to go.
But again, I'm not making a body count of socialism and capitalism. I'm making a body count of the focus of government to protect individuals or the focus of government to protect society. That is what you said in your quote, in your Facebook page that launched me into saying this is what I want to talk about. Was you said, what should government protect? That socialism says we must protect society more than individuals. And that's anytime, my argument is anytime your government decides to protect society over individuals, you will end up with trampled rights and atrocities. Well, it will always end up with trampled rights and atrocities.
I think that's true.
Yeah.
Unless you have frank exceptions. There should be exceptions, the Bill of Rights.
Right, but what I'm saying is
workers have rights.
Right. You should have a government that protects individual rights with frank exceptions, not a government that protects society with frank exceptions. The focus should always be individual rights. That should be what it is, because anytime you focus on the benefit of the majority, you will trample the minority. But if you focus on, we have to protect the individual, that makes you refocus your whole argument and refocus your whole thinking to say, what's the best way to protect the individual? What's the least amount of restrictions we can put on the individual and still maintain cohesive society, instead of what can we do to maintain a cohesive society and maybe every once in a while not trample on people's rights. That's the difference in thinking. That's what I'm talking about, is the difference in thinking of be focused on protecting individual rights with as few exceptions as possible to make society work, not focus on making society work with a few exceptions to protect individual rights. It's a shift in thinking. And the evidence, if we want to go to the numbers of atrocities, all of these atrocities are done by governments actively killing their own citizens for the sake of society. For the sake of a better society, they are actively trampling rights and actively killing people. Anytime there's an ethnic cleansing, that is a government saying these people are bad for our society and we need to remove them. We need to trample their rights and remove them so we have a better society. Ethnic cleansing is a result of putting society ahead of individuals. Mm-hmm. That's what I'm talking about. That all of these that I put on here are not all socialists. There are American capitalist ones on here, including the 130 some odd million Native Americans.
That's right.
That was done over a time period when the United States government said we have manifest destiny, meaning that our society, we need to put our society ahead of these individuals. That the United States actually did that. So it's always socialism, but it's not only socialism. So that's why I'm not making this a socialist and a capitalist thing. I'm making this your laws as a government, laws should always protect individuals before they protect society.
I guess I don't need my notes that I carefully prepared. Since Scott defined himself out. But I get what you're saying. I do. So I have a question. Is there an example of such a society in history? Has it ever been tried? Has it ever been done?
That's what I'm saying. The United States is one of the few that has done that. And because of outside of when it decided to do this manifest destiny thing, outside of that the United States Constitution has been one that protects individuals over society. No. That as it was originally put in to have as few to put restrictions on government. It was one of the few constitutions that said we're going to put these restrictions on government, that government can never do these things to individuals. We are going to protect individuals. That government cannot do these things. So instead of saying here's the government and here's these things that individuals are allowed to do, it said individuals are allowed to do this, and this is what the government is restricted to do. Mm-hmm. That was the focus of that's what made it unique in its time, is that it did not give power to government. It limited the power of government and said individuals have the right to form their own government. Individuals have the right to do this, and the government has these restrictions. It didn't give power to government. It gave restrictions to government.
So, okay, what about the whole slaves are 3/5 of a person's?
Do you know why that was done? Do you even know why that was done,
Do
Mr.
I care?
Yes, you should.
Why would I ever care?
Who wanted slaves to be
the southern states did.
Yes. So that was a ploy to reduce the power of slave owners so that ultimately slavery could be abolished.
But why not simply say we're going to abolish slavery? We're going to establish a republic without slavery.
Because that was the compromise they had to make to get the government.
You don't make those kinds of compromises, ever. I don't care if the southern states are going to be their own separate country. Mm-hmm. If I'm a New England senator or a governor or what have you, they're not going to be in my union. They can go do that and be their own country, and then we will make war on them or do whatever it takes to free our fellow man later. But I am not going to enter into a devil's alliance with somebody who says that a man is 3/5 of a man because of the color of his skin. And now, what about women?
And so that ultimately, again, our government, as it was set up, has ultimately led to the ability of those things to happen.
Are you kidding? Our government dug in its heels against those changes. Dug in its heels. Even after slavery was abolished.
The people dug in their heels, but the way the government was written is what gave the ability for those things to happen. It opened it up. It restricted the limitations of
the civil war. It took a civil war. It took mass protests. It took virtual violence in the streets.
That is all allowed. That is all allowed by our government, whereas other governments did not allow protests, did not allow free press. The establishment of this government allowed those things, gave a doorway for those things to eventually happen. That's why this government is so good.
We had to change the laws.
That's why this was so good.
We had to change the laws.
No, but that's fine. But the Constitution established the doorway for which it could happen that other countries didn't do, like America did. That it opened the door to say you can protest and make these changes. You can do this. You can have free press. You can have these things, and that system of government, that system that said put the individuals above society, opened the door so that eventually those things could be done. When they couldn't be done at that time, it left the door open so they could. Whereas other countries couldn't. You couldn't do that in other countries with the Constitution. You couldn't do that under several of those. That this left the doorway open for the people to make that decision.
I feel like you're shifting out of the burden here. I feel like you're shifting advocacy. I get what you're saying, okay? That the founding fathers had enough foresight to say, we're going to need a flexible system of government. In time, the zeitgeist is going to change. They probably certainly wouldn't have used that term.
Right.
And when it does, our
Can I use a German term?
Well, German was widely spoken in the colonies, by the way. But
most of Pennsylvania was Dutch and German.
Yeah. But I don't know because when you then because if you want to claim that the United States is your prime example, then you got to own the United States.
Yes.
And the fact that the United States did not live up to these ideals for about 190 years at least, you have to own that.
Yes.
But now we're going the opposite direction, and you're going to have to own the future. And I would argue even the present, where we have a system, and it's this system that favors private capital interest so much over the well-being of the individual that individuals are now falling into poverty at a rate unseen since the Great Depression.
That is great. Let's change the definition of an individual, that a corporation can't be an individual, and we're fine.
Okay, but that hasn't happened yet.
Okay, well, let's do it.
So when it does, and you say, oh, that was me too.
Yeah.
Okay,
but here's the
this
thing.
is you now. So if you get me too, you have to be me now.
Because right now, what we are becoming, we are slowly becoming more socialist, where we are creating more and more and more laws that favor that says we're going to put society ahead of the individual. You cannot do this as an individual because we have deemed that is not healthy for society. So we're going to tax cigarettes and we're going to put this expense on you because we agree as a society that this is not good for everybody in general. So we're going to say it's harder for you to get what you want. We're going to agree in general that, guns, even though there's no evidence for this, with the hundreds of millions of guns that are out there compared to how many deaths are, we're still going to make this popular opinion that guns are bad, and we're going to put these restrictions on you for no reason. The majority of people that gun laws affect have never done anything wrong with a gun. The hundreds of millions of guns out there and the tens of millions of gun owners who have never done anything wrong with guns all get restrictions put on them, even though they've never done anything wrong. Because our government has now said, well, for the sake of society, we're going to put these restrictions on you that you have never done anything wrong. On the 99.99% of those of you who have never done anything wrong, we're going to restrict your freedoms for the sake of society. That's what I'm talking about. We are slowly pulling away from protecting the individual and going towards a government that is protecting the society. Mm-hmm. And we're going to trample more and more rights and eventually get to where we're having atrocities by our own government, because that's where it leads.
You don't think slavery was an atrocity?
Yes, of course it was.
Do you think that the status quo, where people are becoming impoverished, where they have to choose between food or heat or insulin, things like that, isn't that an atrocity? No, those aren't atrocities.
No,
Children
I will not let you co-opt the word atrocity to fit what you. Okay, so this is the example. Ready? So, you hit a patch of ice, hydroplane, whatever. Your car flips, rolls, you're partially ejected. You're sitting out there and the car lands and it's crushed.
Mm-hmm.
You're dying. The car is crushed.
I'm dying.
I drive by and see you.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. And then I keep on going.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
There's a camera on the intersection and it sees me drive by, sees my license plate number, identifies me. They come and arrest me for first-degree murder. Is that right?
No, I wouldn't say that's right.
But that's where your argument is going, that you're trying to say that inaction is equal to putting a gun to somebody's head and murdering them. They are not equal. We're talking, hold on, let me finish. We are talking about atrocities where governments rounded up people and shot them. Mm-hmm. And you're trying to equate that with, oh, but we didn't provide that person food. That is not the same on any level. You cannot say that's an atrocity. That devalues what actual atrocities are.
But
atrocities.
How is that different from denying people things like medications that they need to survive in the name of profit?
If I never invented the medication, you still die.
You have people who did not even invent the medication who are jacking up.
Either way.
I mean, the farmer bro, he didn't invent the EpiPen.
Well, he paid for it. His company paid for it. His company, and if he didn't put out the money, if he didn't do it, it never would have existed, and you still would have died.
Are you kidding? You're
trying to equate an actual put a gun to a person's head murder and say that that person over here who won't sell you this product is the same. Not at all. That devalues what actual murder is, and it allows you to comfortably sit in here and say, "See, they're the same, and it's morally wrong. And we should have the same effort to stop this person as we would to stop a murderer who puts a gun to somebody's head and pulls the trigger."
Okay,
that is giving you power over these people because you don't like what they're not doing, and you're trying to take the same power to control them as you would a murderer who is taking a gun to people's head. You want the power to control what they do. So you're trying to co-opt the word of this to apply to them. That's immoral.
It seems to me, Scott, that when you're arguing about how the system did this and the system did that and the system has given
no, Josh,
freedom
dead is not
and
dead.
So on, I would argue that what's actually changing is society. That when people come together and realize, you know what, we shouldn't count people as 3/5 of a person when obviously they're a whole person. And they say, we're not going to interest ourselves with compromise because you don't compromise with slaveholders. You don't compromise with them. You kill them.
Yeah, you only compromise with abortionists.
Well, okay, so you don't compromise with certain people, and if people are going to hold
on, so I shouldn't compromise with abortionists? You're telling us that believe that that's murder, that we should go and kill abortionists?
If that's what you truly believe, then it makes logical sense that you would fight. If you truly think that war is being made in the human womb, if you truly believe that,
you are advocating.
But you don't really believe that.
You are advocating murdering abortion doctors.
Isn't it genocide?
I believe it is.
Then what are you doing?
We're trying to get our government to stop it.
Well, okay, that's
we're
one
not
possible
taking
solution.
We're not taking the law into our own hands. We are trying to get our government to make the law to stop it.
Well, what I'm telling you is when the atrocity is serious enough, you don't wait around and you don't play games and you don't pussyfoot with legislative processes. At the end of the day, wrong is wrong. The slaves knew that slavery was immoral. Mm-hmm. Half of America knew slavery was immoral. The rest of the world, which had already outlawed slavery almost entirely by the early 19th century, knew slavery was immoral. So I don't care that a few white men in the South felt that somehow slavery was just, it's part of the natural order of things. It's part of our time. No, you go down there and you kill them like Sherman did. And that's the end of the problem. You solve it that way. And in fact, that's what it eventually took.
Because that's what you do. That's what you do. When you believe that the Jew is causing all the problems in your country, you take that step and you eradicate them. Yes? Yes?
Okay. And
yes?
so you have a Warsaw Uprising. No.
That's exactly what you just said.
No,
that is exactly what you just said.
Equate slave owners to Jews. I am in no way going to equate that. People being born into a religion is not the same as choosing to own other human beings as slaves.
You have to, because
you are making equivalence.
No, it is not false equivalence. You're the one who said when you really believe in something, you have to do something about it. You did not put any caveats on that. When you said right now, if you really believe that this atrocity is happening, that this wrong is happening, you must step up and do it. So the Germans who really believe that the problem in their government and the problem in their country was the Jews, it's okay for them to step up and eradicate them. That's the argument you're making.
I'm not going to say it's okay, but it is logical. It is logical that if you have that belief, that's how you're going to respond. And that's why the Jews staged the Warsaw Uprising, right? Because they recognized that they were being eradicated and they had to fight back, and they did so. And so that's what you do when you are faced with certain inhuman and immoral situations. And when we have a state, the United States, for example, where our government is bought and paid for by a few private interests who then manipulate the laws, this Constitution, which you so reverently have affection for, and I think rightly so, for the most part. They have tarnished that Constitution. They have torn it to shred.
Then let's get back to it.
They have blown their noses with it.
Let's get back to it.
I agree. Okay, we need to eliminate, which is really socialism for the rich.
Let's
so
get
here
rid.
I am advocating against socialism, but a specific brand, socialism for the rich, which is what we have. We have to fight back against that.
Then we do it through the proper channels that our Constitution has given us.
But if the Constitution is broken because it has been interpreted and twisted, you look at the Supreme Court, which upheld Citizens United and basically said that corporations now are people and that money is free speech. That is a perversion of what the Founding Fathers intended. In fact, you could probably even go back to Adam Smith and Thomas Jefferson and find quotes that argue against that sort of private influence over government.
And then that would be great. I don't have a problem getting rid of... I don't necessarily have a sweet spot in my heart that I've not been convinced by anybody that a corporation needs to be a person. I don't have a sweet spot in my heart for that. I have a sweet spot in my heart for governments protecting individual rights. That's the argument I'm making. And no, I'm not getting off topic, Josh. I'm literally talking about governments who put the society ahead of the individual. That's been the focus of everything I've been saying. That society, that putting society ahead of the individual is what gives us a problem. And it makes logical sense. Logic is dispassionate, and logic is cruel. And logic will get you to the point.
Well, it's cold. It's indifferent.
It's cold. Yeah,
it's indifferent.
And there's a great quote. And well, I mean, no, Josh, that's an interpretation of the Constitution. That was a wrong interpretation. If we want to make the argument whether it was wrong or not, he's saying that you just agree that Citizens United, which would require changing the Constitution. No, it's how someone interpreted it. You get different judges in there, and that's what we're talking about. But the idea that how logic is cold, there's a great, because I don't know if you notice this, I like Star Trek. And
Star Trek?
Yes.
Okay.
Even though I'm wearing a Star Wars shirt, I'm wearing a Star Wars shirt right now. I have a sweet spot in my heart for both Star Trek and Star Wars, and it's very difficult to argue against both of them. But I remember growing up watching. I really enjoyed watching Mr. Spock, and I loved the way he talked, and I loved his lines in this movie, and I like to structure my own sentence structure based on how he talks, because it's just so concise and efficient and exactly what you want to say. Laconic, yes. We've talked about that before. But in Star Trek 2, there's a line that is said at the beginning of the movie, and it is emphasized by his sacrifice at the end. Which is the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few or the one. Yeah. So we both know Star Trek. that is Christianity. That is the message of Jesus. That is equal to what we should be doing as human beings, as people. That is me choosing to make a self-sacrifice of myself for the needs of the many. That is a noble thing to do. That is what we as individuals should do. That's what Jesus calls us as individuals to do. That's not a bad thing until you codify it in law, where the government now says the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few or the one. Now, once you codify that in law, that opens the door to atrocity. That is always and should always be a personal choice that all of us should make. We should all put the needs of the many ahead of the needs of the few, and we should all make self-sacrifices for others. That is what we should do as human beings. Once you codify that into law, that's where it becomes immoral, because now you can force people by the law, you can force people to lose their rights and lose their individual rights for the needs of what you consider the people. Because again, democracy is two wolves and a sheep discussing what we're going to have for lunch.
Really?
And the sheep will always get eaten because that's what democracy is.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
That's what democracy is. That's what the needs of the many outweighing the needs of the few.
Do you have that on a meme to prove it?
I don't. But that's what the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few means. If you have two wolves and a sheep, the needs of the many, the wolves need to eat, sacrifice the sheep for the wolves.
If it's not memed, it didn't happen.
So that's what I'm talking about. Yes, us as individuals should do this.
Okay.
But once you codify it into law for a government, it will lead to broken rights, destroyed rights, and atrocities. And I got that list right here of the millions and millions and millions just in the last couple hundred years of government stepping in and saying, for the sake of the people, we're going to eliminate these rights and ultimately kill these millions of people. For the good of, literally the phrases the phrase for the Pol Pot revolution was, what is rotten must be removed. For the good of the people, what is rotten must be removed, right? The political cleansing in the 1950s by Mao, do you know what their slogan was? A great leap forward.
A great leap forward.
Yes. Mm-hmm. All right. So, that's what I'm talking about.
Industrialization of China.
Yeah. And again, manifest destiny. These great words that say, for the sake of the people, we are going to eliminate these rights and eliminate these people. Once you codify the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, once you codify that into law, it leads to broken people. It leads to broken. It leads to the rights being removed and lives being lost by their own government. Active killing by a government. We're not even talking about we're going to let them starve. We're talking about rounding people up and shooting them. That's what that leads to. So you should always form your government around protecting the individual with frank exceptions.
But you don't seem to care if people are killed by lack of care. You're okay with that, though. So if we
I'm not okay with that as a person. No, I'm not okay with that as a person.
But as a citizen, whatever. You're okay with that in another form. So Pastor Scott is opposed to that, but Citizen Scott has no...
Individual Scott, I'm opposed to that, and I should step up and do something about that. That's my responsibility as an individual and as a human being, and that's what I do.
What about
That's
taxes?
why I work where I work.
What about taxes? What's your opinion on taxes? Because
I think taxes are a necessary evil. I think that's a frank exception.
Coercion.
Yeah, but that's a frank exception. As long as your taxes are being spent to build a government that's there to protect your individual rights, that's a frank exception to what's going on.
How about building a dam for hydroelectric power? Well,
let a company do that.
Let
a company build that?
Either way, I bet. Are you okay with that? If that means that people have to be displaced from their homes, you're okay with mass eminent domain? We're going to relocate this entire town, or this Native American village, or whatever it may be. You're okay with that?
I believe that eminent domain demands a fair market value given.
Yeah, fair market value.
Right. So
asterisk.
Right. So if you're cheating people out of the fair market value, it should be more than fair market value if you're going to force people to leave. It should be fair market value plus a percentage. Like that should be that's the frank exception. They have to be removed. So you got to give them at least what they have invested into it and have. But if you have to go through, that's a frank exception.
And who measures that? What about the Trail of Tears? Do you have the Trail of Tears on your list?
Yes, that's in the 130 million Native American genocide from the 1600s to the 1800s because of manifest destiny, when the government said, for the sake of our society, we're going to remove these individuals.
Well, they were removed because there were private interests who wanted to get their hands on the natural resources in Arkansas, gold and what have you.
Either way, the government took upon itself, for the sake of the people, to violate these individuals.
Well, actually, it wasn't really for the sake of the people. It was for the sake of a money few.
Doesn't matter.
And that's what you have going on.
It doesn't matter. As long as you can say it's for the people, you can do whatever you want. That's the problem. When your government is saying, when you are no longer protecting individuals, you can say whatever you want is for the sake of the people. So that's why you must codify the individual protection.
Okay, but despite the Supreme Court in your system saying, no, you can't relocate these people, the people were forcibly removed anyway. President Jackson removed the Cherokee, and he was ultimately impeached. And I don't know if that was part of it, but he was impeached. Nonetheless, he remained president, he finished his term, and thousands of people perished. And they lost their land. And so where was the system then? Where was the system? I mean, you have the Cherokee who literally used the system. They attempted to assimilate into the system. Mm-hmm. They established schools. They dressed in an American style. They left behind their native ways of dressing.
Let me see your hands. Let me see your hands. Oh, man. I've got a little dirt under that nail. Apparently soap doesn't work. Why even use soap? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Why even use soap? Apparently soap doesn't work because I've got dirt under one nail.
Oh, okay.
So you're gonna pull a sample of this didn't work. Apparently the system doesn't work.
Well, obviously the system didn't work for all those people who are dead.
And soap didn't work here. Right? Does that mean soap doesn't work?
So here's the thing. Okay. So you're telling me
protect the individuals is all I'm telling you.
Okay, but what about things like the military draft? Military draft doesn't protect very many individuals, but you have to go.
Mm-hmm. Again, that's government putting society ahead of individuals. It shouldn't do that.
So you don't think there should be a military draft?
No.
What if the nation gets overrun by its enemies?
Then that's a frank exception in that instance.
Okay, so then it's a frank exception if you win, right?
What's that?
Because if the nation is being overrun, then it's okay.
How do you define frank exceptions? You talk about frank exceptions all the time, and you're saying I can't use them?
What I'm saying in the case of frank exceptions is the Bill of Rights has a list of frank exceptions to majority rule. That the way democracy and the way the United States and our republic works is the majority are supposed to rule, but there is a small set beginning with 10 rights that was later expanded. Now we've got like 28 or something amendments or what have you. We've got a whole, actually more than that, I think. But we have amendments which provide frank exceptions to things that the majority cannot infringe upon. Mm-hmm. And it goes from your freedom of speech, religion, conscience, have you, to your right to bear arms, to your legal rights, if you're accused of a crime, and so on. Okay?
As long as frank exceptions are put on the power of government, that's what they're for. Not frank exceptions put on the rights of people. Josh has a great question here I want to address because it could change this whole argument depending on how you define it. He says, can socialism work if it protects individual rights? And according to you, socialism is protecting society, not individual rights.
Well, socialism
So his answer would be no.
No. Whether you're looking, even if you look at the Soviet Constitution, there are individual rights. And in fact, the entire point of socialism is we're going to come together to protect the things that we as a society value.
Over your individual rights.
That may be the case.
Then Josh, socialism cannot work.
No, but then there may be frank exceptions to that. So at the end of the day, societies are going to do what they want to do. Whether they want to collectivize and be socialist, or they want to democratize and be democracies or republics.
That's fine. But here I have a question for you. Should societies be defined by their goal or their exceptions?
I think it's a blend of both.
Come on.
I think that's a false dichotomy fallacy. A society, I mean, you look at the fruits of the society, right? What is the society actually doing?
You want to define socialism by what it's trying to do or what its exceptions it's making? What is socialism? Is it this goal of protecting society or is it the exceptions? What is socialism? Is socialism the exceptions?
Socialism protects the individual by bringing the individual into a pack, if you will. There's a reason why societies form. Societies form because individuals are oftentimes insufficient against the threats of nature, the external threats such as enemies and so on. Why else do you form a society? No man is an island. We all coexist together. We have to get along with each other. And what we found is the idea of capitalist voluntary exchange doesn't always work because you get individuals who then skew the system in their favor, who take advantage and things like that. Socialism is designed to minimize and even eliminate that. That's the goal of socialism. The idea is if we work together, we can accomplish more than all of us working selfishly in many different directions.
But it is the selfish desire to make things better that advances us as a society. That's where competition comes in.
But competition isn't unique to capitalism. Socialist societies have competition as well. You can have competition in a communist state, in a communist society, but you can't have exploitation. The idea is you eliminate the exploitation of the individual over the masses.
Because those cars coming from Russia were so good in the 50s.
Well, hey, if they're built without exploited labor, I'd probably prefer one. At the end of the day.
That didn't work. Great,
so,
yeah.
So, right. How about we keep socialism for the rich, but we make it the kind of socialism Scott is talking about?
I can't see the rest. Oh, it's the same. Oh, got it.
I'm not sure I follow what Josh is trying to say there. And Michael, hello, Michael. We had a debate on Sunday. It was a great, fantastic debate. I'm glad to see you here on A Valid Answer. Michael wants to come on here and argue with us, but he'd probably just end up arguing with me. I don't know. I don't know if Michael could handle a pastor, though. But we'll see.
Well, I'm sorry. Michael is you guys, your argument is
He argued in favor of capitalism on Sunday.
Gotcha. But in general, it's an atheist and a theist?
We're in a group called Atheism versus Theism, Bans.
Cool.
And so the idea is mostly it's theists and atheists, but many different...
Give them a plug. Is that found on Facebook somewhere? Where do you find it?
It is. It's Theism versus Atheism, No Bans.
Cool. What's the no bans mean?
Meaning that we generally don't ban people, even if you post some stuff that's pretty, what you might get banned for in other groups.
I have no problem banning people, so...
Yeah, well... But...
Because it's my page.
So... I'm not sure where I'm going with this now. I expected a different discussion today, frankly, and so I prepared for a slightly different discussion.
Tell me yours.
Well, I want to stay relevant here. Ultimately, I think we can do more working together than we can as a bunch of individuals who are constantly competing. There's a time and a place for competition.
Yeah.
And I think there's a time and a place for individualism and individual rights.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also time for us to come together. Karl Marx recognizes this. Karl Marx recognized that history moves in stages.
Do you hear yourself when you say that?
What?
There's a time and a place for individual rights.
Okay.
You're so kind. Sorry, go on. Karl Marx, what?
Karl Marx understood that history moves in stages, that you go from, if you will, chiefs and slaves to kings and serfs or lords and serfs to owners and laborers, and then eventually you reach the communism, where everyone is the proletariat, everybody is a worker, everybody is equal. And capitalism is one of those stages in history. In fact, it's a necessary stage, because one of the things that capitalism does really, really well is it gathers up a whole bunch of wealth. But then what happens is you have a few people at the very top who hoard all of that wealth for themselves, and they leave the masses, threaten them essentially with a state of slavery. And when the individual wakes up to the fact, wait a minute, this is messed up, and then they organize, they come together, they seize the wealth, they seize the means of production for themselves, they redistribute it, and now, ideally, you have a new society, a society which has never really been tried before on the planet.
It's been tried.
No, it has never happened before.
It's been tried. Hold on. It's never happened before, but it's been tried.
Okay, fair enough. Fine. Okay, with varying results.
Yeah, but all of them leaning towards millions of people being killed by their government.
Well, is that any worse than capitalism or
yes,
slavery or feudalism
much worse. That has been much
any
worse.
Of these systems we've had in the past?
It's a great way of saying we're going to test this experiment at the cost of millions of lives. Oh darn, that didn't work. We're going to test it again at the cost of millions of lives. Oh darn, that didn't work. Let's test it again at the cost of millions of lives. Oh darn, that didn't work.
And yet you look at what capitalism is doing right now. I mean, and you look at how capitalism has undermined every single attempt at socialism on the planet that it's been able to undermine. Take a look at what's happening right now in Venezuela. Mm-hmm. Socialism doesn't work. Meanwhile, Britain and the United States hold $1.5 billion of Venezuelan gold reserves, and they refuse to release them.
Because they're committing atrocities.
No, because the people need food to eat, and by withholding those reserves, the people continue to starve.
The people were starved under their own government. The people were starved under one of the richest South American governments with all of this wealth and oil, starved their own people with no help from the outside.
No, the problem is you have a command economy which failed, and I'm not a fan of the command economy. And once the West realized, hey, the Venezuelan economy is failing, let's go ahead and hold their reserves and freeze those assets and not let them use those to feed their people. And, of course, now you have the chaos that we have today. Now you virtually have a civil war brewing.
But like you said, the people lost their rights before that happened. The socialist government brought them to that point before the West said, okay, we're going to withhold. You just said that.
At the end of the day, I mean, the basics matter. And socialism tends to appeal to masses of poor people, because here in the West, we talk about the importance of having the right to, do whatever, own things, to do things. in much of the world where people are poor, they simply want clean water. They simply want food.
Mm-hmm.
Socialism is an excellent vehicle for delivering those basics to those people.
My argument is that is also an excellent vehicle for atrocities.
As is capitalism.
Not in the same scale. Not in the actual. Not in the actual.
Do we have
same
to go down
scale.
the list now? Do we have
not
to
in the
do,
actual same?
Do we
scale.
have to do King Leopold in the Congo? Do you have King Leopold on the Congo?
No.
No? Oh wow, you missed that one, huh? Yeah, King Leopold, the Belgian Congo, if you ever heard of that little thing, that was his little private plantation carved out of the center of Africa, in which at least 10 million people died, millions more enslaved, millions brutalized in various ways, including forced amputation of children's limbs.
Because their government was designed to protect individuals?
No, because the government was the king, and the king wanted to cash in. It was capitalism. It was pure, unbridled capitalism in its crystalline form, if you will.
Okay. They need a government that protects individual rights. Socialism doesn't do that. That's my point.
Well, capitalism
Socialism
didn't do it.
doesn't do that.
Capitalism didn't do it either.
It seems to be doing it right now.
Oh, I don't know about that. I think they're struggling quite a bit as it is.
Every modern atrocity has been by governments protecting the people at the sake of the individuals. That is what we're talking about. That is why. I mean, it's so kind of you to be a nice God that says, there's a time and a place for individual rights. I believe our government should always protect individual rights, and there should be as few exceptions as possible.
There are times when the needs of the society outweigh the greed of the individual, and I'm always going to come down on the side of the majority in that case.
He votes for the wolf, the two wolves, not the sheep.
Well,
that's what you're saying. The two wolves outnumber the sheep. They deserve to eat it.
Well, maybe that's natural law. I don't know.
All right. Well, this has been A Valid Answer with Scott and Marshall. Catch us all the time on Sundays at 5 o'clock, her current cast or Valid Answer on Facebook, or catch us on Mondays at 4 o'clock like you did today. We love everything that you guys, I know we can't always get to every single post that comes on there. We try to hit as many as we can. We love the conversations. Keep joining us in the conversations before and after and all the time. But until next time, this has been Scott and Marshall, Valid Answer. We'll catch you next week.
And good comments, Scott, there at the very end regarding Central America. And yes, that's why sheep flock together, so they don't get eaten.
You mean Josh said that, right?
A society. Josh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, until next time. See you guys.
Take care.